So we are going to be talking about AutoCAD 2021, and today's presenter is Ryan Wunderlich. Ryan, I'd like to hand the floor over to you.
All right, so a little bit about me. My name's Ryan Wunderlich. I have just about over 35 years of experience using AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I'm currently one of our senior support specialists in our support solutions. So if you have problems with your Autodesk software and you call in to us and get a hold of one of our support people, chances are you can be talking to me. I've also taught AutoCAD as a certified instructor. I've had over 15 years of experience in CAD management. Before I came to IMAGINiT 5 years ago, I had spent 8+ years in cruise ship building. I did 5 years of support for civil survey landscape architecture before that. I've worked in mechanical design, electromechanical, printed circuit board and schematics, architectural acoustic, as well as doing equipment layouts in industrial spaces as well. And I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So with that said, let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover today and what's new in AutoCAD 2021. So they've got some streamlined trim and extend options. There's been some enhancements to revision clouds because we all know that revision clouds are painful. They've got break objects at a single point. The only thing that they've done is when you hit enter, it will continue to break objects at a single point where it did not do that before. Basically some quick things some new things that have been added to the quick measure so you can actually get areas. Drawing history support. This is a subscription only benefit. So if you are on a maintenance plan, you do not get this, but if you are on subscription, you do. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like. Some block palette enhancements. The XREF Compare, we all used Drawing Compare starting in 2019 when we got excited that we could actually see it. Now we can actually do XREF Compare, so when somebody changes an XREF, we can see it. In addition, we'll cover some things that they've updated for graphics performance, touch enhancements. I will talk about the AutoLISP improvements. I will not be showing you the AutoLISP improvements. Most of you don't use Lisp anyway or do programming, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. So the first thing is that they've streamlined our trim and extend option. So instead of having to first select boundaries for the trim and extend commands, the default mode now is quick mode. So it selects all potential boundaries in the entire drawing by default. And then after you start the trim or extend, simply select the objects you want trim or extended. The default options are selecting the segments to be trimmed are down to individual selections, single clicks. You can also do freehand selection and a 2-point fence selection. The freehand is if you click and hold the left mouse button, you can do essentially similar to a lasso. That's the freehand selection by holding down left mouse button, dragging cursor around one or more objects. Start a fence selection by clicking 2 points that define a segment. We all know how a fence works. And then selected objects that cannot be trimmed or deleted instead. This is some new functionality that you guys have not encountered before. So moving on, when using trim with the boundaries that include hatches, the trim and the shift trim operations, which are extend. Sean, this must be your first time here. Yes, I'm going to talk about what's changed, and then I'm actually going to do a demonstration. So let's get back to this. So with the trim and shift trim operations in quick mode, use only the boundaries of the hatches, not the hatch geometry itself. So this behavior is controlled by the trim edges system variable. If you turn that to 1, it will actually use the lines inside of a hatch pattern. So the change commands: extend extends objects to meet the edges of other objects, trim extends objects to meet the edges of other objects. New system variables: trim edges controls whether trimming and extending the hatches in quick mode is limited to the edges of hatches or includes the objects within the hatch. And then trim extend mode controls whether the trim and extend commands use the streamlined inputs. So with that trim extend mode, depending on how you have that toggled, either you will be using the classic trim and extend that you're used to, or you will be actually using the new trim and extend. So now I'm going to go into a demonstration of the trim and extend. So here we are. Here's my AutoCAD 2021. All I'm going to do is come up here and hit trim. And you'll see it doesn't ask me to select any edges. It just says trim. So I can click on this object, it automatically trims. I can trim this object, and you'll see it actually allows me to erase the object into here. Right, it's picking up some stuff in here. Here's that fence. And if I go fence through these objects, you'll see it actually erase the objects, even though those objects do not touch one of them, one of the boundaries. That's what happens here. Okay, so if I do that, and if I just do a quick hatch pattern here, right? So we're going to hatch this. We're going to set the scale here to 50, right? So if I go back and launch my trim command here, right, you'll see that it's actually just going to the boundary. That's that trim edges. So if I do trim edges here, and I set this to 0, right, that's a system variable, so you have to type that in, and you'll see now it's trimming to the actual lines inside the hatch pattern. That's what trim edges is for. Right, and it's more or less the exact same thing if you select the extend command, right? It'll extend, right? Your freehand, if I come in here and just do a freehand, you'll see I can extend all these just like that. All right, Benjamin, I am not covering anything specific to mechanical. I am only showing the basic of AutoCAD. So just understand, will there be a video or webinar on the LISP enhancements? There might be. That's not currently scheduled at this time. So we can certainly come back and discuss that. Has the new trim command test on very large objects to check to see if performance is affected? I have not checked it on extremely large drawings, but for the most part, I have not seen any specific performance problems. That's not to say that if you don't open up a drawing that has 32 million polyline objects, that it's not going to be a little clunky to work in. Making it erase is going to be a pain in the butt for my students. Okay, if that's going to be a if that's going to be a problem for your students, then I suggest you teach them the classic trim and extend. And that goes back to this mode right here, where you take trim extend mode and you set that back so that it's using the regular. Okay. So that's pretty much all about the enhanced trim and extend. So now we're going to talk about some revision cloud enhancements. So the revision clouds now include single values for their approximate chord lengths, AAK, the distance between the endpoints of the arc segments. We all know that in the older revision cloud, you could do an arc min, an arc max, etc. So it would give you those chord lengths. And now for the first time a revision cloud is created in the drawing, the size of the arcs are determined based on the percentage of the diagonal length of the current view to your screen. This ensures revision cloud starts at a reasonable size. I'll show you what that means in a moment. You can change the arc chord length of a selected revision cloud object either in the properties palette from its shortcut menu or within the new Rev Cloud properties command. And you can control whether the chord lengths of the arcs have greater variation, generally more uniform, etc. With the Rev Cloud arc variance system variable, turning this system variable off restores the previous way revision clouds were created, while leaving it on results in a more hand-drawn appearance. So now when a revision cloud is selected, the properties palette now displays Rev Cloud as the object type instead of a polyline. So they have actually taken this out of being a polyline and done this. And yes, couple of questions. We'll back up real quick. Yes, Lori will get a copy of this PDF. She can send it out to you. I believe Lori will also be posting this to our IMAGINiT YouTube site within the next couple of days after this is done, so you can always come back and review this at any time. All right, so getting back here, so the revision cloud actually shows as a Rev Cloud instead of a polyline. Revision clouds are still basically polylines, but they have some additional arc properties and the options to switch between grip styles. That's Rev Cloud grip system variable. So the new command is Rev Cloud properties, change commands Rev Cloud, and the new system variables of Rev Cloud arc variance. So with this enhanced Rev Cloud, and you're going to kind of like this. This got me excited, right? Come to draw, come down here to Rev Cloud. So if I want to draw a rectangular Rev Cloud, I can go from here and there. Now when I click on this, you're going to see that it is a square polyline instead of each individual arc. And now I can drag this, but it still behaves like a polyline. So if I want to, I can stretch this out here. I can add an additional vertex just like I do with polylines. Okay, all right, we can come in here. We can add additional segments. So instead of having to erase and redraw the Rev Cloud, now you can manipulate the Rev Cloud once it's been done. This is the same process. That was the rectangular. I can do a polygonal, right? So I can go from here to here to here to here to here. And you'll see when I grip on it, it's a 5-sided polygon, or at least the grips appear to be a 5-sided polygon. When I come over here to my properties, you're going to see this is that Rev Cloud property. You will see that I have the arc length is set at 1 foot. Can I remove a grip point? Okay, so you're talking about this. It gives me the option to stretch, add a vertex, and remove a vertex. If I remove this vertex right here, that vertex is gone, heals across, again, just like you can do this on a standard polyline. So think of this as a polyline on steroids with some additional enhancements. Pardon me. If you want to change the arc length here, you can change the arc length to 6 inches and it will become 6 inches. And again, this is the distance between here and here. This is that chord length is 6 inches. All right, I come back in here. I can make this 24. That's 2 feet, etc. That's pretty much it for the Rev Cloud enhancements. Things that we have asked for quite some time, but we've not gotten yet. Now we have them, so we can use them better. Is there a way to get the arc length to quit growing when stretching? The arc length is fixed here, so this arc length does not grow. It stays exactly the same now using 2021. Right? So if I come back, that arc length is fixed at 6 inches. So unlike what you've done in the past with the other ones, can you change it from standard to calligraphy without redrawing it? That I don't believe so, because we have arc length varies and we don't have it stylized here. So if you want the calligraphy type, you're going to have to set that up ahead of time. Okay, so that we're talking about that. That's the Rev Cloud enhancements. That's pretty much all they've done. So we're going to talk about break objects at a single point. Let's see, do those segments still behave the same? Yes, any segments that get added when you change those lengths using the grips are still act and behave as if it's a closed polyline and the grips within a polyline. So break objects at a single point. With the new break at point command, the break at point tool on the ribbon can now be repeated by pressing enter. This command directly separates a line, arc, or open polyline into 2 objects at the specified point. All right. This one is going to be the easiest one to show you today. So prior, what would happen is you would come up here to modify. You would come over here to break at a point. You would click this. You'd click your object. You break it here at the intersection. If you hit enter, it would restart the break command, and then wherever you clicked, it would become your first break point. So you'd have to type the @F to do first, etc. Now when I hit enter on the keyboard, it brings me right back to break at point, and I can continue to do this. Break at point. Those of you that do a lot of line breaking, this is really fun to have now, so that you can just continue to hit enter and repeat the command. Rev Cloud can be broken or open, all right? Got a lot of people interested in Rev Cloud, so I can just do a freehand Rev Cloud from here to here. Done. Okay. My Rev Cloud is right here. Now, if you have an open Rev Cloud, it does not have the same behavior pattern because it is not a closed polyline. When we get to the Q&A, we can come back and talk more about this. All right. So measure geometry option. How many, if you've been using the quick measure at all, you found out that the quick measure is kind of a cool command, started in 2020. And now you've got the option, one of the enhancements that they've made is that you can now click within a closed area, highlights it as green, and will display the calculated values in the command window in the dynamic tooltip in the current unit format. You can use Shift plus click to select several areas, and then the cumulative areas and perimeters are calculated. And you can also click, hit your Shift mouse button and then click again, and we'll deselect a selected area. To clear the selected area, simply move the mouse a small distance. Change commands, measure geometry, now has a quick option for real-time measurements of dimensions, distance, angles, and now areas. So that one, all right, I have an object right here. We come back up here, we click measure, you're gonna see that's 26.5, etc. And now when I'm in here and I click, you'll see that my area is 584.9938, and there's my perimeter. If I hold down my Shift button, I can now click inside there, and you'll see that my total area is now shown for the 3 objects selected. If I click out of that, and if I click out of that, it goes back to the 584. And all I need to do is move that slightly, that disappears. But you will see down in the command line that it does tell me what those areas and perimeters were. That's the current enhancement to quick measure. I actually got excited about this one. This one thought was pretty cool. Can you change measurement amounts such as acres? No, it is defaulting to your standard units here. So if we go into your units, right, you're going to see that your units are in architectural, decimal, fractional. So if I go architectural and I go quick measure here, now I'm in square inches, and it will also show square feet, but it will not show acres. So just be aware of that. Can you bring those areas to text? No, this is a quick measure. This is not meant to do anything other than give you informational bits. It's not meant to, it's not designed or meant to do that as far as allow you to label these. Well, measure a line within a block. If it's geometry, it will measure it. So I'm measuring my arc length right here. So I see my arc length is 4 5/8. I can actually see that I believe that's the radius. You can copy from text. You can copy from down here, and you can paste that into mtext, but it's not tied together. You could do that with a field, and that's a little more complicated. I believe I covered that 1 or 2 webinars ago with one of my tips and tricks on how to use fields. I personally have a Lisp routine that allows me to click on hatches and actually label them with either square meters or square feet. It's not too hard to change that to be acres or whatever. And all I'm doing is creating a field from that. All right, that's quick measure. That's the only thing I'm going to show you is that you can now do areas. So now we're going to talk about drawing history support. If you're on subscription and you have the subscription benefit of drawing history support and it's turned on, has to be enabled. If you save drawing files to a OneDrive, Dropbox, or Box account currently, they are working on some others, but currently those are the 3 that are supported. Additional versions of these drawings are created as you work, creating a version history. The previous versions will be listed in the new drawing history palette, so you can compare them with the current version of your drawing. So note that the cloud storage provider that you choose sets the number of versions. When you're signed into your Autodesk account, a notification appears for the first time you access a drawing saved in your Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive account. For example, if you previously saved a drawing to your Dropbox account, the following notification would display. All right, and I'll show you what that notification looks like. The blocks palette, nope. Yep, so let me show you that. Right, so drawing history right here. We're back here in our AutoCAD. I've opened up this drawing. Now, this particular drawing is actually located in my Dropbox. And if I am on my View tab, and you're going to see there's a new button here called Drawing History. And right here, you can see that I initially started this drawing at 11:09 a.m. by me. I had one of my coworkers go into our Dropbox. She made some modifications to this drawing, and when she saved it, I can see that she did some work at 11:57 a.m. And then I came back on Tuesday, May 5th, and did some additional updates. Karen Mesa, if you divide a line, how can you change the dots to a big X? That's going to be controlled by something called PD mode or point display mode. So you actually need to change that to a different point display. We can talk about that at a different time. Does this function unlock the file for editing? So if, for example, I go here, you'll see that I can compare, and it will show me what's different between my current drawing, and you'll see that it drew this rev cloud. This is that drawing compare, right? We learned about this in 2019. If you do a purge, does the version history get purged? No, that version history is stored on Box, OneDrive, etc. So it's actually stored by Microsoft or the online provider. It is not a part of the actual drawing per se. So you're going to see that these objects here showed up. If I click on this one and do the compare, no common objects were found between the two drawings in comparison. So I'm going to exit out of this. Right now it should say no common objects were found. That's because there was nothing in this drawing here. So when I created this drawing, I had nothing in it. And now when I go back to my very initial one that I knew had nothing in it, you'll see everything is rev cloud and greened. Again, this is all just coming back to our standard, basically DWG compare. We've all been playing with this if you've been using 2020. I showed this in my 2020 webinar. This was actually pretty cool. Actually, I think I showed it in 2019 as well. So drawing compare is really cool. It's been around since 2019. They've improved it in 2020, and now it's gotten a little better in 2021. If you switch from a different storage location, i.e. Dropbox to OneDrive, do you still keep the drawing history? No, it starts over because those are two separate entities. Okay, so when I'm done, I click that, we're done. So since I'm in this drawing and I have some things in here, now we're going to come back to this drawing in just a moment. We're going to talk now about the block palette enhancements. So the blocks palette has been enhanced to provide more convenient access to blocks anytime and anywhere. You can actually use your Autodesk account with a supported cloud storage provider such as Box, Dropbox, or Microsoft OneDrive to get quick and anytime access to your recent blocks and or block library drawings. The Recent tab of the Blocks palette displays snapshots of the recently inserted or created blocks in the current drawing. You can sync the recent blocks in a drawing to a cloud storage location and access them from any device using AutoCAD Desktop or the AutoCAD web app. Click Sync Your Blocks, sign into your Autodesk account, specify the cloud storage location, and start synchronizing your blocks. So the Sync Your Blocks option may not display in the Blocks palette if there are already recent blocks in your current drawing or if you did not use the Blocks palette to sign into your Autodesk account. You'll see, hey, their recent blocks are not currently synced. Specify a cloud storage provider here. And then you'll see in the Autodesk AutoCAD, I am actually right here looking at the web portal. So this is web.AutoCAD, or I think it's web.autodesk.com or web.autocad.com. This is where you can use AutoCAD through a standard web browser. Please understand that AutoCAD through a web browser is even more basic and simplified than AutoCAD LT. It is the epitome of stripped down AutoCAD. Can the blocks be synced across the servers? not necessarily through this mechanism. This mechanism is designed or was intended to be synchronized across cloud servers. So like OneDrive, etc. You could probably do this to sync across. You can't use this to sync blocks between servers. You still have to use IT's functionality as far as like a using Xcopy with deltas, etc. to make blocks from one server emulate or replicate to another server. You would still have to do something like that. So in this case, you can change the recent blocks folder location. So this is a new option. So you type in options, you go to your file support path. Yeah, it does apply to dynamic blocks as well, any block. And you'll see my blocks recent folder location. I can set this to my Dropbox. And now if I were to open up AutoCAD, now of course, the AutoCAD in the web is having issues connecting to Dropbox to synchronize these things. So it doesn't really work real well right now for me. So I do apologize that I can't show you that. But I can. Yeah, it's web.autocad.com. For those of you who have not seen this before, right? I can sign in. Whoops, let me pull this out. All right, let me go here. All right, so this is just going to be AutoCAD literally in the web, right? And you will see right here that I have Dropbox and I have OneDrive. I can actually synchronize to my OneDrive stuff. So I have an AutoCAD web folder here. Here's my testing drawing. I'm just using AutoCAD in a standard web browser. Nothing more, nothing less. I can go blocks here. This drawing does not contain any blocks. I can go recent. It's going to go back and look at my recent blocks, which comes from that drawing variable that I set to my Dropbox. And we're going to get an error here because Dropbox is having an issue communicating. Very large Dropboxes, I should say. Small ones are working. Autodesk is aware of this. They are working on fixing it. All right. Library was saved to local. I've already changed this. This is not working, but this is AutoCAD in the web, right? Basically, this drawing is saved in OneDrive, so I can access it through any web browser. I can also access this drawing anywhere that I have access to a OneDrive. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. That's where this recent blocks is. Let's see, can you share the block palette with other people in my company? That's going to be a little more specific, simply because that is a function of AutoCAD in user. So the block palette cannot necessarily be shared. If you have a shared location for your blocks, you can certainly set that up, but that's what you're going to be dealing with the other people. So if we come back to here, right, and we come back to our insert, and I come back to here, and we look at recent blocks. Here's our block palette. Right, here's what's in my current drawing. Here's my recent blocks right here. You'll see my block libraries. This was the other enhancement, is that I can actually go down here, and I selected that webinar. I can also browse to other block libraries. So if I browse to another block library, it'll actually populate the blocks that are in that block library here and allow me to quickly get to them. These are the enhancements here in the block libraries. So when choosing folders for block libraries and recent blocks, it's recommended that you use folders located within supported cloud storage providers, Box, Dropbox, and or Microsoft OneDrive currently. If you have the block palette information in the cloud, Danny, that means that I can actually, if I'm set up right, anyone who is also pointing to that block library, as far as in that cloud drive, will be able to access it even if they can access it from the web browser. So I'm in a web browser here. I would be able to access that block palette from a web browser if I had set that up for OneDrive. This is the Dropbox error that I'm talking about right now, this unexpected error, because my blocks, my recent blocks and or my libraries are actually in Dropbox and not in OneDrive. And so this is the unexpected error. Autodesk is aware of this. They are working on it right now to fix it. let's see, do the blocks stay there now? So what's the advantage of having blocks? If I remember before, I could grab a block in one drawing, then I'd have to redo it in another. Well, if you have this common folder in the blocks palette, right, when we go back to here, right, if I have a common folder here, I would be able to grab any of these blocks here and put them into my current drawing. Good CAD management said, yeah, in 2020, blocks palette for me is extremely slow to open. Is that me, or is there just a fix for that in 2021? Number one, I would ask if you were fully updated yet on 2020. I know that 2020 does have some updates. There's an AutoCAD 2020.1.2 for sure that you do need that does help with some of the block palette performance. The other things that can cause problems in block palettes is making sure that all of your Windows updates are done. The graphics drivers need to be fully updated as well. And there are some other things we could certainly look at for that. Will the blocks in the drawing automatically, hold on. Will the blocks in the drawing automatically update at sync? If you synchronize them, yes, where you will see a synchronization button. And I don't have any in here that have changed, but I would see one and I could synchronize it, and then you can force an update in your drawing. All right. So the other drawings tab, that's what I showed you here, has been renamed now to libraries. You can now specify a folder, a drawing file, or any block definition stored in a drawing to insert as a block in the current drawing. The libraries tab includes a drop-down list that displays the 5 most recently used block libraries for faster access. If you choose a block library in cloud storage, you can use the same blocks in the AutoCAD web app. That's the web.autocad.com. So your new commands, dash insert content inserts a block or block into the current drawing. This is like the dash insert command. Blocks palette displays the blocks palette. Minus insert inserts a drawing or block into the current drawing. New system variables, blocks recent folder sets the path where the recently inserted or created blocks are stored. That might help you out to share if you're setting up multiple machines. And block navigate controls the folder, file, and blocks that are displayed in the libraries tab of the block palette. I showed you this already. That's that updated block palette. So now we're going to move on to the XREF Compare. With an operation very similar to the drawing compare feature, you can now compare the changes made to a drawing file attached as an external reference in the current drawing. Any changes to the reference drawing or the compare drawing are highlighted using revision clouds. This is a new function. All right, so if a reference drawing is changed, balloon notification comes up and you'll see that you have a checkbox here to compare the changes. You'll also see when your XREF comes up here, says needs reloading. When you right mouse click, you can do a compare, recent changes, and you can see what's changed between the two XREFs. Right, new commands, XCompare compares an attached XREF with the latest state of the reference drawing file. XCompare close closes it. XCompare next zooms to the next change set of the XREF comparison result. The XCompare previous goes to the previous. New system variables here. Controls visibility of objects that are not used in the XREF comparison. Specifies the path where the backup XREF file is stored. Sets the size of the folder where the backup XREF file is stored, etc. Right, switches visual effects and enables the comparison between an XREF and the reference drawing file. So let me go ahead and show that. Does AutoCAD 2021 fix the wipeout issue? If you're using wipeouts, I would highly recommend you figure out a different method. Wipeouts are horrible. And I can go and explain a lot on why wipeouts are bad things. But that's more of a conversation that I should have with you offline. Usually what I do in those scenarios is I will actually set a hatch pattern to be color 255, and in my CTB I will set 255 to print at 1% screening. So basically it prints blank, and that's how I fix that problem. Wipeouts are bad. Okay, so you'll see here I have a little dining venue, and you're going to see here that this is an XREF and I'm missing some wall segments in here. So I went back to the architect and I told him, hey, you're missing some wall segments. So he's going to come in here, he's going to fix this, right? We're just going to fill in these segments here. All right, let's fix this. And then the architect, of course, decides that he wants to move this back just a little. Actually, no, we like that where that one is. This one, we're going to move back just a little, right? Very minuscule, right? And so as soon as I commit this with a save, I come back here, and you're going to see, I see that the reload floor plan, it shows that I was the one that changed it, and I'm going to compare the changes. So when I hit this to reload the floor plan, you're going to see this is now that XREF Compare. It will draw me a revision cloud around the couple of things that were changed. And this is something you might not catch. If that wall was moved ever so slightly, it will pick up the wall change. Now, what I have seen in many cases is that if someone who's making these changes accidentally moves that wall a little bit and doesn't realize it, nobody's going to notice this until later. This actually picked up on it. And again, with your XREF Compare settings, right? Not in the current XREF, I can change colors. Again, this is just like your drawing compare. I can go only in the current XREF. Anything that's no differences, I can turn off. So it will only now show me what changed, right? Anything that's not compared, I can change the draw order. I can also put in filters so I can turn on, so if there's a hatch pattern that changed, it'll actually draw a revision cloud around a hatch pattern, etc. Right, once I'm done, I click that, and you will see that the XREF is now loaded. I can keep the revision clouds. There's a way to do that where you can have it keep the revision clouds so you know what you're up against, but usually this is more of a visual reference. Will it still compare the XREF? The XREF has been rotated, or does it need to be in the exact same location? We get XREF from architects and have to move them to our coordinate system. That's going to be a bigger issue for you, Roger, because I understand that you are moving them to your coordinate system, which means you are probably working with an architectural floor plan or a foundation plan, something like that, and you are probably working in Civil 3D or Map 3D, something along those lines. As long as the drawing name is the same, and once you've set it the first time, unless you are unloading and then reloading the XREF from scratch, that will not give you any comparison values. If you replace the old XREF with the newest version that you get from them, and their coordinate system has not changed, it should automatically highlight these as normal. I haven't seen any problems with the XREF Compare yet. Let's see, if the user only calls up the XREF and saves it making no changes, right? So if I'm in here, right, I pull this up, I go ahead and hit save, right? Because that, right, I come back here, it says it was modified. I do compare. You see that there's no comparison, nothing changed here. Will it cloud if the layer changed? No. This is the big thing to understand about how the DWG Compare and the XREF Compare work. They are only looking at geometry. They do not care what layer it's on. They are looking for geometry changes. And the magnitude of the change can be an issue. If I change something less than 1/1000th of a millimeter, it will not pick it up depending on the size of the drawing. If the drawing is very fine and it's 1/1000th of a millimeter, then yes, it will pick it up. If the drawing is, 300 meters long, it will not pick that up. Let me rephrase this as comparing based on object handles or doing some sort of visual check. No, it's neither. The comparison is comparing geometry to geometry, X, Y, and Z coordinates of geometry. And actually, in most cases, it's just X and Y. What about text changes? In the XREF Compare here, yes, it will pick up changes in text. Anything that changes about that text. So if somebody adds a single letter or fixes a misspelling, it will highlight that word of the text. Okay. So this will pick up geometry changes, i.e. lines, arcs, circles. Text is a geometry change. Hatch patterns are geometry change. If I change something here, so for example, I move all of this stuff here, right? So I'm on multiple layers. Let's just say I move everything to layer 0, okay? And I save this. and I go back to here, it's going to tell me this changed, right? No changes. It did not pick up any changes because none of the geometry changed. Will it pick up new entities? If the new entity is a piece of geometry, yes. If you have not played with Drawing Compare, I highly recommend, we're getting a little far afield here, I need to bring you back. I highly recommend you go back and see, I think it was my What's New in 2020, talks more specifically about XREF Drawing Compare, and I believe I also have, there's a tips and tricks where I really got into DWG Compare. I recommend going back both of those. Well, if will it pick up geometric changes in object names, i.e. a pipe size change? If it's a geometry change, as far as physical geometry, it will. I have not tried this yet using, I have not tried it yet with, for example, doing a pipe size change in civil with the civil object enablers, so changing in a 6-inch pipe to a 12-inch pipe. Now, my guess is it will pick it up because you are drawing lines to represent the inside diameter, which would be a change. If you only draw center lines, it may not pick anything up there as far as a change. However, if your text change, your label text that says, hey, this was a 6-inch, now it's a 12-inch, it will at least pick up your text as a geometry change and let you know. Okay, moving on, graphics performance. So the speed of panning and zooming in 2D has been enhanced with a technique that takes advantage of objects with similar properties and another technique that displays appropriate levels of detail at different levels of magnification. So in panning and zooming in real-time 2D, AutoCAD-based products normally perform regen operations as needed. Normally, this operation is not noticeable except in very large drawings. In those cases, you might want to turn off the RT regen auto system variable to prevent automatic regeneration. I've seen this happen a few times where we have to turn this off in very large projects, and I'm talking very large civil projects to get Civil 3D 2021 to actually see what's going on here. So when working in 3D models, Navigate generates higher or lower fidelity graphical representations of the 3D geometry in some circumstances. The program's responsiveness when using 3D orbit, pan, and zoom operations has improved significantly by making use of multi-core processors. This improvement is most noticeable on complex 3D models using visual styles with that rendered curved surfaces. So no, the hatch command has not gotten any quicker. It's still the same. What I usually recommend for people, let's see, is Drawing Compare only for vector drawings, or can comparison be made for raster files? Nope, raster files are just the outside boundary is all it picks up. For the hatch command, I prefer not to use the ribbon. I don't like how the ribbon interpolates my hatch, so I change mine to HP DLG mode. I change back mine to 1 so I get the traditional classic hatch pattern box, and I find that that is quicker. Right, so I don't really have anything to show you the graphics performance because I can't prove definitively one way or another. How many cores does AutoCAD use? All right, let's talk about this. AutoCAD, at its base, the ACAD.exe still contains original 4 and 8-bit code originally back from the early 80s. AutoCAD, for the most part, is still entirely single core, single thread operation. With the new graphics performance, what they are doing, in the older versions of AutoCAD, you had something called whip thread, where you could set whip thread to 1, 2, 3, or 0. Whip thread would allow the AutoCAD engine and the graphics display to use regen and redraw operations to span multiple cores, usually up to 2. The new graphics performance enhancement here is allowing it to grab multiple cores, so more than 2 cores of more than one processor, to do redraw and regen operations. Do not expect Autodesk at any point in time in the near future to ever want to take AutoCAD to a full true 64-bit multi-threaded application. HP DLG mode, that is the hatch setting again, to bring up the classic. All right, since you're all asking about it now, HP DLG mode. I set mine to, right, I believe it's 0. And now when I type in hatch, oh, no, I want HP DLG mode, and I want to set that to 1. And now when I type in my hatch, it brings up my classic hatch pattern dialog box. Right, this is what I like. I'm old school CAD. All right, touch enhancements. So support for gestures has been enhanced for a better touch experience. With touch-enabled screen or interface, you can now do any of the following. Pan and zoom. When no command is in progress, drag with 1 or 2 fingers to pan. When a command is in progress, drawing with 2 fingers open to pan, pinch or spread with 2 fingers to zoom. Selection, you can tap on an object to select it. When a command is in progress, requires you to select objects, you can drag 1 finger to create a window or crossing selection. Escape, double tap with 1 finger to end a command. When a command is in progress, tap a location when prompted for a point. For a more precise control over object snap, drag your finger over an object till you see the object snap you need. Then release your finger. You can use 2 fingers in the middle of a command to pan and zoom. I will have this conversation with you guys now. Your finger and your tablet are not precision drawing instruments. Enough said. Your finger cannot get down to the finite 14 decimal places that Autodesk does support, or the AutoCAD does support. Believe me, I've tried it. It does not work. All right, and finally, we're going to cover the AutoLISP enhancements. So improvements have been made to AutoLISP and DCL. DCL is the dialog control logic. These improvements include cross-platform development with Microsoft Visual Studio Code, Unicode support, and DCL is now supported on Windows and Mac. That's a big differentiation. It was only supported on Windows. So new commands. Make Lisp app compiles 1 or more AutoLISP or LSP source files into an application, VLX, that can be distributed to users and protect your code. Okay, changed. VLISP. When you type in VLISP, it displays the AutoLISP development environment. Those of you that are used to using old school AutoCAD and you type in VLIDE or VLISP, brings you to the VLIDE development environment. Now in 2021, you can actually, they have quit development. Well, they haven't actually done anything with VLIDE for probably 10 years. They've not added any enhancements. So now they've moved this to the Microsoft Visual Studio environment where you have to download and install Microsoft Visual Studio. And then you have an additional add-on that gives you the Lisp functionality. So you can do a lot of the same functions that you could in VLIDE that you can do through this Microsoft Visual Studio. However, those of you that have done a lot of Lisp, the buttons, the step over, step into, step out, your standard F8s, add watch, add breakpoints, etc., are a little more difficult to find because the environment's different. Now, if you type in VLIDE one time in AutoCAD, it will give you the option to use the old VLIDE, which has had no changes, or will allow you to use the new Microsoft Visual Studio and will actually prompt you to install it if you don't have it installed, the Visual Studio component, and then will also prompt you to install the additional AutoLISP add-on. Right, so the LIPSys right here, LISPsys controls default AutoLISP development environment, started with the VLISP command. So you can change that environment to flip back and forth if you do not like one or the other environment. So the AutoLISP extension here for Microsoft Visual Studio Code, this is a new AutoLISP extension that was released for use with Visual Studio Code, allows you to edit and debug AutoLISP source files within AutoCAD. VLIDE still exists for now. This is intended to be the replacement for VLIDE console and should perform the same functions with some enhancements. I have to agree with you, Aaron, using VLISP with the Visual Studio, it's got a learning curve on it. So if you are very familiar with VLIDE, you need to forget all of that when you move over to the console. I don't have it set up yet. I've had to do some other things, so I had to take it off. I interfered with something else that I had running, so I had to take off the Visual Studio, and now I can put it back on. Using the AutoLISP extension, you can create and modify Lisp files using features such as autocomplete and code snippets, autocomplete rocks. Format all or selected code statements in a Lisp file. Those of you that format your stuff know that every right parenthesis or left parentheses needs to start with an indent, right parentheses, etc. You can add watches and breakpoint while debugging. Execute the AutoLISP code statements and AutoCAD commands in the debug console. And for more information on getting started with the Visual Studio Code and the AutoCAD AutoLISP extension, right here is the link to getting started with the Visual Studio Code.